Let me be real with you. I am not some all-knowing character writing expert, but I have spent a lot of time building characters, breaking them, fixing them, and figuring out what actually makes them feel tangible in an intangible space. And if you're anything like me, you've probably sat there thinking, why do all my characters feel the same? Or why do they feel flat? So, in this video, I'm not cutting that out. In this video, I am going to show you the methods you can use, that I use to give your character's personality without overcomplicating it. So, take what works and leave what doesn't. So, let me ask you something real quick. In your opinion, what makes a character memorable? Is it their design, their backstory, their unique powers? Well, regardless of your answer, these things can aid in the effort to make your character feel more memorable. But what makes a character remain in your head beyond their catchphrase is who they are. And that might sound like a no-brainer, but I can guarantee you, in some way, shape, or form, you're leaving out a key part of your character's character in the way that they behave. A character's personality is their greatest asset and your most powerful writing tool. What kind of person your character is determines everything. How they move through the story, how they affect other characters within said story, how the audience feels about them, how they feel watching them. A lot of people approach character writing like they need to get it right on the first try. And that pressure is exactly what causes overthinking. Personality isn't something you invent perfectly, it's something you discover through iteration, observation, and a bit of experimentation. The goal isn't perfection, it is believability. When a character is believable, the audience will fill in the gaps for you, and that is where the magic happens. Headcanons, assumptions that are way too accurate. A fandom will ride on a solid character more than a strictly fleshed out one. Character is super important for brand recognition. If you're really trying to get there, your character needs to be identifiable through personality first and foremost. And then all the other design stuff can come after, because I'm assuming you are a deliciously scrumptious, talented artist and you can get that done. As I was saying, create a person. And people, well, people have flaws. You don't need a 20-page backstory to make someone feel real. You need clarity in who they are at their core. And the methods I'm going to be sharing with you aren't rules. They are frameworks that help you think more clearly. If something doesn't click for you, that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It just means your process is different from mine. So just consider that before being like, oh my god, I don't fit into these stereotypes of like writing specific things specific ways. I'm actually doing it all wrong. Do not think that. Your process is just different than mine. Writing is one of the most personal creative outlets there is, especially when it comes to characters, so give yourself permission to experiment and even fail a little. Every quote-unquote bad character you write is actually helpful for you to refine your instincts. And over time, you'll notice your characters start to feel less like constructions and more like people. Now, if you wanted to skip through the entire whole video, just to get to the main point, it's right here. To sum up this entire video, the way I write characters with strong personalities without overcomplicating or overthinking it comes down to three main questions. Who raised them, who damaged them, and who or what heals them. These three questions are the foundation of my character writing. They link together to create characters' base psychology, how they think, how they react, and how they move through the world. Once you have those answers, everything else becomes easier and, quite honestly, just falls in line. I start filling in the blanks with tropes, behaviors, habits, and desires, but it all stays rooted in those three ideas. Because every other question you might ask yourself, what they fight for, who they want to become, what they forgive, what they run from, it all connects back to those three things. Their upbringing, who raised them, their pain or limitations, who or what damaged them, and their growth and change, what or who heals them. These concepts are broad, but they're supposed to be, because that means you can take anything in your character's story and fit that idea into those concepts. And you create the longevity of your story through how those answers shape characters' goals and their needs. If this all sounds like a bunch of mumbo-humbo, it kind of is, but let me just give you a streamlined idea. Create your character's backstory, make it concise, make it understandable, and then go from there. However your character treats their past is how they will treat and react to their present. Again, that sounds like a no-brainer, but I'm telling you, when you start writing or when you start wanting to create character, things can become inconsistent because you get brand new ideas and you get brand new headcanons, even though they're not technically headcanons, they're actually canons because it's your story. And then you just start thinking like, okay, so maybe Demi actually isn't a jackal shifter and instead he's a and then you actually just start convoluting your own story because your brain's running at a mile a minute trying to make up something interesting. Your character can be interesting without being overcrowded, and it really comes down to their psychology and what makes them who they are. You don't need 100 questions to write a good character, you just need the right ones, and answering those is the story. Now let's talk about something I love talking about, and this all sound mighty specific because it kind of is, but personality affects story so greatly. It so much affects story, and I have a very fresh in my mind idea to talk about, so let's get into it. You can take the same exact story, same setting, same literally everything, and completely change how it feels just by swapping the MC. Put a fearless, confident badass in a hopeless world, and you get action. Put a terrified teenager in that same world, and you might get horror. Take something like Resident Evil Requiem. Fire game, fire! Oh, delicious freaking game. I am a Leon girly, okay? But I want to be Leon. Like, I want that to be my life. I would like to be a cool man, freaking jumping through lasers and backflipping and front flipping for no freaking reason, just because I have the core strength to do so. But yeah, let's get back on track. The difference between playing as Leon versus playing as Grace, it is night and day. The difference is so strong you can feel it and taste it in the air. Something about Leon, which we will get into, differentiates himself between Grace. And that difference between playing as Leon and Grace comes down to experience and character. Leon is confident, he's trained, he's capable, so the tension feels controlled. He has lived through this 1,000,000,001 times. This is like a Saturday for him. Grace, on the other hand, she just got into the field, and for low-key no reason. Don't have me talk about plot right now. Anyway, Grace feels vulnerable and reactive and, afraid. So the tension feels overwhelming. You are afraid with her because she is reflecting her fear onto you. The way the gameplay goes, the way you can creep around corners, everything really comes down to how you view Grace. And it is such amazing psychology, and it works so well. When you're playing as Leon walking through the freaking the mental institution hospital place thingy, you're kind of like, oh, I got this in the bag. I got guns. I got freaking all this stuff. And you're like, oh yeah, I'm Leon. Who's gonna stop me? And when you're playing as Grace, you're like, oh, I'm a little baby. I'm gonna die. Today is my last day on Earth. This is it. I have no standing in this franchise. Therefore, I could die in this game. And it's kind of like it keeps you on edge. But it's not even just Grace's standing within the franchise, it's just her character and her personality. She's so afraid and timid, and you understand that from her character introduction, which we will get into probably a little bit later. Character introductions are really important, and Grace and Leon's character introductions in this game are so freaking good. Anyway, it's the same world. They're the exact same threats. You fight the same set of enemies, but the different personality creates a different feeling. Now, the key takeaway I want you to have from this segment is this. Personality affects story, and story determines theme. Before you even think about considering writing your MC from scratch, ask yourself this. What kind of story are you writing? And then ask yourself this question. Does this character turn heads, or do they blend into the crowd? Because there are characters who affect story, and then there are characters who are affected by the story. And that's why it matters so much. Two characters can go through the same exact plot, but the emotional weight, pacing, and even the genre can shift drastically depending on who's at its center. A bold, confident character will push against obstacles, making the story feel fast-paced and action-driven. A fearful or uncertain character will hesitate, question, and react, which naturally slows things down and builds tension. This is why personality and genre are more connected than people consciously realize. When choosing your protagonist, you're not just choosing a character, you are choosing the emotional tone of your story. A character who turns heads demands attention and drives events forward, while a character who blends in often becomes a lens for the audience to observe the world. Neither is better, but, They just create different experiences. Strong personalities also create stronger relationships because they give other characters something to react to. Conflict, humor, tension, all of that comes from difference in personality. If your character doesn't have a clear internal identity, the story has nothing to bounce off of. So instead of asking, what happens next, start asking, who is this happening to? That shift alone will elevate your character writing instantly. Now, I know this sounds a bit complicated, and if you're not into psychology, you're probably like, why are we doing this? But trust me, this tool will change your character writing forever if you use it correctly. Heck, it might even change the way your characters appear in the story because you will have a concrete and concise set of guidelines for them to quote-unquote follow. Typology is basically a way of categorizing personality patterns. It's basically astrology for nerds. Systems like IMBTI, Jung functions, enneagrams, things like that. But don't get stuck on the labels. Typology is a tool, not a box. If you use it wrong, you will create caricatures of personality types. If you use it right, you will create character consistency. This is how it helps. Typology can help you clarify how a character makes decisions, explains emotional reactions, and it also helps keep behavior consistent across scenes. My personal example, of course, is Demi. I know you guys are tired of hearing this name. I know you guys have heard this name billions of times. If you have become a space cadet and you watch my videos regularly, you better. I have a gun to your head right now. You better watch my videos. I'm just kidding. Wait. Anyway, Demi is an INFJ. I don't know if the whole T and A basis is still something that people use or is considered legitimate still, but it means he's turbulent, meaning he is more so like, I'm shaking my boots, oh my god, everything sucks and I'm gonna die. Not really, but that is the dramatized version of what the T means. And this works for his character because of his core beliefs. He is deeply empathetic, observant, internal, and driven by meaning and protection. But he's not just a label because he is shaped by his trauma, his personal culture, relationships, and responsibility. What typology did for me personally was clean up a lot of my characters. It stopped them from acting randomly and it gave them behavioral logic. But at the end of the day, typology comes from observing people. It is a social science. And if you want to write better characters, the way that typology will help you write better characters, the quickest way to do that is to live life. Pay attention to people themselves, how they talk, how they react to things, and how they change over time. The best reference for writing humans, or humanoids, is other humans. Typology works best when you treat it as a behavioral compass instead of a strict identity label. It helps answer questions like, why would this character react this way, rather than what type are they supposed to be? One of the biggest mistakes people make is using typology as a shortcut instead of a foundation. Characters are not checklists. They are layered individuals shaped by experiences. What typology does well is give you patterns, how someone processes information, how they make decisions, how they handle stress. Once you understand those patterns, you can write more consistent and believable reactions. For example, a character who prioritizes logic over emotion will feel deeply. They just process it differently. That distinction is where nuance lives. When I applied typology to my own characters, it didn't box them in, it just clarified them. And it helped me remove random and out-of-character moments that didn't align with who they were. But mostly, most important part, real people are inconsistent, and your characters should be too. Typology does just give you a baseline, but life experience bends and reshapes that baseline constantly. That's why living life, observing people, and paying attention to behavior in real life is just as important as studying theory. At the end of the day, typology should support your creativity, not limit it. Now, it would not be a Mighty Mochonaut video without a few different methods that you can use to apply to your character writing experience. Some of these you might have had thought about before in concept and not put them to use, and some of these might be brand new to you, so let's just talk about exactly what we're about to get into. The contradictory core method. This method is very useful for if you want a character that is basically an oxymoron incarnate. So you give your character two traits that shouldn't coexist. For example, you could make your character kind but emotionally distant, confident but approval-seeking, logical but deeply impulsive. Contradictions create tension, and tension creates personality. The core of this exercise helps you break out of the writing one-note character trope and forces you to think about why someone behaves the way that they do. It pushes you to explore the space between traits instead of just listing them off, because people aren't consistent. We are layered and we are inconsistent and we are oftentimes contradictory. So when you give your character opposing traits, you create internal conflict by default, and that conflict naturally shows up in their decisions, their dialogue, and relationships. You stop asking why they do what they do and start asking which side of them shows up right now in this moment. And what this creates is a character that feels unpredictable in the best way, complex, human, and emotionally engaging. Not random, but layered. Someone who can surprise the audience while still making complete sense. It also gives you a built-in set of character arcs, because one side of that contradiction can grow, collapse, or evolve over time. That tension becomes a story engine, and suddenly your character isn't just existing in the plot, they're fighting themselves inside of it. Number 2, the private versus public self method. How does your character act around strangers, around friends, when they're alone? A character who is the same in every environment doesn't feel human. I've actually mentioned this in a previous video, but that's because this idea is actually uber helpful to those who struggle with nailing down core personality traits and making them feel completely cohesive. Sometimes you actually don't have to. The core of this exercise helps you understand performance, because every person performs to some degree. It forces you to define your character. It shows versus what they hide. So if your character is a very private person in public and then they become very open and honest when they're alone, it kind of alludes to how they view their own self-esteem. It forces you to define a lot of your character's internal and external dialogue as well, and that can also reflect character. Amazingly so. If your character's internal dialogue is absolutely hilarious and their external dialogue is very straightforward, you can see why they're hiding who they are, because, if people knew that they were like more lighthearted or more funny, they might be taken advantage of. Whatever applies to your story is how you can write this trope or this style of writing well. Around strangers, they might be guarded or curated, and around friends, they might loosen up. Or alone, that's where the truth usually lives. And this method helps you map out emotional safety levels. Who are your characters closest to? Who do they trust? Who do they fear? And where they feel free. It also reveals insecurity, confidence, and identity in every very natural way. So, just consider those things when you're, considering using this method to base your character off of. And what this method often creates is a character that feels dynamic and socially aware. Someone who changes depending on context, which makes their interactions feel real instead of scripted. It also gives you a powerful set of moments where those walls drop down or crack, when the public self fails or falters and the private self slips through. And those moments, that's where the audience connects the most, because now we're not just watching a character, we're understanding them. And in some way, shape, or form, people in real life have dropped their public facing self to either aid someone else or to make them feel better, and that creates a very human experience. So this method is actually really it's actually easier to use than it's not, because you can list off a bunch of public self traits and then write based on those, and then some private self traits and write based on those, and create experiences with those masks being used and applied to the character. All right, this is number 3, the final method, and it's basically, I like to call it the breaking point test. So say you have a fully fleshed character, and this character is one that has been known to behave a specific way consistently throughout the story. So you put your character under pressure, hypothetically, but you could even do it within the story as well. But try hypothetically first, because you can get a feel for how you want to write that big scene if you ever get to that point. So hypothetically, put your character under pressure. Ask, what does it take to make them break bars? Do they lash out? Do they shut down? Do they become someone else entirely? Stress doesn't build character, it reveals it. So the core of this exercise helps you define your character's limits. It shows what they value most by forcing them into a position where they might lose it. And everything is calm. When everything is calm, lol. When everything is calm, anyone can seem composed, kind, or strong. but pressure exposes truth. So this method helps you figure out what your character protects, what they fear, and what they're willing to sacrifice. It also helps you avoid surface level interactions or reactions for that matter, because now their breakdown or their control, everything comes from something deeper than the situation itself. And what this creates is a character that feels emotionally grounded and real under pressure. Someone whose reactions don't feel random but inevitable. It also gives your story weight, because now conflict actually means something, because your character deeply reacts to that conflict, not just anything within the story, but something specific that would make them break within a situation. When your character reaches their breaking point, it's not just dramatic, it is earned. It must be earned, or else they seem like a crash out. Unless your character's a crash out and you're writing a crash out, the breaking point might not be best for them, because apparently everything's their breaking point. But yeah, whether they break or bend depends on your character, and if it's breaking, then it will shatter them. If it's bending, then it'll test them, or you can decide if they will rise above it. And within those situations, the audience will understand why, if you can create a solid breaking point for that character. I use all of these concepts to write each of my character, and it helps me know if I'm putting too much into one character and when to pull back for believability, because it's all about balance and character consistency. Not every character should have the same goals or the same desires unless they are like-minded, but having too much of the same character within a story can make them all feel interchangeable and less like actual characters and more like little pawns, high-key. Again, not every method is going to work for you personally, and writing characters, it's personal. So sharing characters can feel like putting a piece of yourself on display, and not everyone is going to like them. But here's the truth. You don't need everyone to like your character. You need your people to love them, and those people, you will find them. Again, if you didn't gather anything else from this video, but one truth, let it be this. Stop trying to make your character perfect, and start making them appear human. That is the core of good character writing. It's like trying to make your character perfect will inevitably have you wind up with a Mary Sue or a Gary Stu. I'm telling you, if you're like, oh, and then actually my character can't experience pain because they have this power. Oh, and no, my character doesn't cry very often because of this. Or no, actually my character can come to the rescue for everyone. No. Not everyone can do everything, unless that's the gimmick. Unless your gimmick is a character that is perfect and there's something missing from their life, or there's something that they're trying to achieve and they can't despite their perfection, then that's actually a good pull. But if you are writing for a specific kind of story and your character isn't meeting your own writing criteria, then maybe focus on one concept for your character. Pick a single emotion or pick a single sentence and work off of that. Because personality isn't something you force. It isn't something you can just simply create out of thin air. It is something you study from understanding how people operate. And overall, it's something you uncover. So the more you write for your character, the more you'll understand them, and the more you'll want to actually show that personality, because you'll become proud of all the work you've put into making them who they are. It's low-key like raising a kid. Haven't had a kid before, but low-key, Demi's my child. Anyway. That's it for today. Stay creative, stay safe, and have a blessed rest of your day.